I spent the month of June watching 20 LGBTQ related anime for Pride, and let me tell you, things get wild. You've got a crazy yandere that seems to have kidnapped a child, a guy feeling some type of way while he's ice skating, and whatever this is.
And I've decided that I want to die.
I'm going to give each one of the 20 little reviews, so be sure to stick around until the end to see what these shows all have to offer. Make a list of the ones that interest you, and try to find yourself a new favorite show. Okay. Let's start things out with an LGBTQ classic, Bloom Into You. Yu Koito had always thought that love was a magical thing, being completely enthralled by how it was depicted in movies, manga, and songs. However, when she was confessed to by a close classmate, she didn't really sprout the wings and fly like she thought that she would. When she starts high school and joins the student council, she asks for advice from her upperclassman Toka Nanami. Nanami helps her through it naturally, as you would expect an upperclassman to do for her kohais, but once they're done, she confesses her love to Yu out of the blue. From here on out is a journey of Yu trying to understand the love that she always imagined, and see if it is just as magical as it seems to be. Bloom Into You is a lesbian love story about self-discovery and what love truly is. Yu, the main character, has only experienced heterosexual media. She never once considered that she actually might be into girls. So when Nanami declares her love, she tries her best to understand why. It's also debated that Yu could be asexual, but I've had friends that say that this isn't the case for later developments in the manga. Yu takes her time to understand her possible feelings for Nanami, and while Nanami can be a little pushy sometimes, Yu is very firm in taking things one step at a time. Although I will say there are times where Nanami does go a little too far, so be warned in that aspect. It is absolutely no surprise though that this series has garnered the reputation that it has. Bloom Into You is wholesome and sweet as hell, takes its time to flesh out flawed characters and build a solid romance, and is a spectacle to the eyes. It is literally done so perfectly. The supporting cast is also really fantastic. A good example is Maki. Maki is a great outlet of support for Yu and her struggles throughout the season, which is on top of being great representation himself, because he's a romantic. There's a strong possibility he could be Aro Ace, but we only know for certain that he, quote, can't fall in love. My only gripe with this series is, again, Nanami is a little pushy. Sometimes in specific scenarios, it's a little too much, but most of the time, it's not an issue. That's it for the small review. I'm going to do as much as I can to keep them condensed and to the point, and now I'm going to grade the anime by overall score and representation. What I mean by this is that the representation will get a score on whether it was good, like having a solid romance, good characters, overall, just a positive experience. Or they'll be graded by bad, like fetishizing LGBTQ people or making them the butt of jokes. I'll grade the story with representation in mind, while also including my general thoughts on the overall story. I'm going to give the representation for Bloom Into You a strong 10 out of 10, and the overall story will get a 9 from me. I would give it a 10, but unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, the story for the series wasn't fully adapted. Only half of the manga is in the anime. And there we go. The format has been established with a great Pride Month anime. Now let's talk about one that's pretty bad. This being Loveless. If you didn't already, take a second to pause if you need to. I've listed some trigger warnings for those that want to check out some of these shows, but could be worried about the contents within them, because you never really know what you're getting into. With that being said, Loveless is an abomination. There is no other way to put it. This show is horrendous. I actually really regret watching this show. So in this world, everyone is born with a pair of cat ears for some reason, and if they have sex, those ears go away. I'm not making that up. That's a real plot point. And also, it's the kind of art choice where they have both human ears and cat ears. Like, they have the little human ears, and then the top of their scalp is where cat ears are. They also have tails for some reason. These cat ears are seen as tokens of innocence in this world, which is already pretty weird, right? Well, it gets worse. Fighting in this series requires two people, one being a fighter who deals damage, and one being called a sacrifice who takes all the damage. It almost seemed like a kinky version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sounds way weirder, right? It gets worse. Ritsuka Aogi, probably said that wrong, finds himself, like, inherited or something by a friend of his brother's, Sobi Agatsuma, after his brother died. The two get to the bottom of how Ritsuka's brother died while they fall in love with each other. You might say to yourself, Hunter, why did you say it like that? Why is this a bad thing? Well, Ritsuka is 12 years old, while Sobe is 20. So, yeah, it's straight up pedophilia. There's no beating around the bush here. And it's not even subtle. It happens in the first episode of the damn series. It mishandles its female cast greatly, too, almost making them feel like a joke. The main character is really unbearable. I get his life is rough, but he has no redeeming qualities at all. Sobe is a predator.
I'm Chris Hansen. No, you're not. Is it? No, you're not.
The plot doesn't feel like it actually exists at all, and the series really does seem like it only is here to have a 12-year-old emo boy stressed out while he's put in sexual scenarios with a 20-year-old. There's nothing to enjoy here. Every series on this list I managed to finish, but this is the only show I could not get more than a few episodes into. I do not care if it gets better, because the plot was just that bad. Although I fail to see how it would get better. Probably only worse from here on out. The stories for this series is just one of the worst I've seen in all of anime, and the representation reinforces negative stereotypes heavily. In yaoi, or boys love-based stories, pedophilia unfortunately tends to be a popular trope for whatever reason, so I'm hereby giving this story a 1 out of 10, and the representation also a 1 out of 10.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Absolutely terrible. Lane, if you're watching this, you were so right. This series is so bad, and I really regret watching it. With that out of the way, we've now completely established what this video is going to look like from now on. I'm going to give praise to anime with good representation and criticize or warn people about anime with representation that isn't good. The reason I wanted to make this is because I have a lot of friends and family in the community, and I would really like to narrow down some shows that are good and give them more notoriety, while also highlighting shows that are bad and tell people to please stay away from them. The way I'm determining what's good is if it presents it proactively or casually, meaning, like I said earlier, that the character isn't the butt of jokes, it doesn't isolate them in the story somehow or make other characters treat them strangely, and they are respected by their peers. They embrace who they are, stuff of that nature. I'm determining what's bad if the show does things like fetishize them, make them a villain or bad just because they're LGBT, or make them really strange or unusual. Of course, it'll be a case-by-case basis for each anime I review because all of them are going to treat their characters very differently, so we'll just see what happens. I would also like to really quickly give a big shout out to DD because they posted a lot of these shows as recommendations on my Bochi video. So without them, this video would have taken much longer than it did to actually make. If you're wondering, who are you to qualify something like that? I get where you're coming from. I am a cis white guy, after all. So let me reassure you that this video has been reviewed by 23 members of the LGBTQ community. I wanted to make sure this video was as accurate as possible and was a good representation of the people I'm making it for, so I tried to get as many people on board as I could. Of course, that doesn't mean you'll agree with some of my opinions, and I, of course, won't be as knowledgeable about some of the stuff compared to other people, but regardless, I will still do my best for you guys. So, let's get to talking about the next show. Paradise Kiss, or Parakiss, is a character-driven fashion show. It's also a josei series, which means it's targeted towards adult women. Despite not being a part of the target demographic though, I was a big fan of this show. Yukari Hayasaka is pulled in by the fashion studio Parakiss to be their model for an upcoming competition. While she initially is hesitant, she ends up accepting their offer, and what follows is an incredible journey of self-discovery. I was admittedly very surprised how complex and grounded all of the characters in the series were. I mean, the character George is a great example of this. While being one of the two predominantly LGBT characters in the series, with him being openly bisexual, his actions are very driven in a way that are almost like that of Fletcher from Whiplash, in my opinion. Just definitely not as extreme as Fletcher, of course. It's hard to get that crazy. But he knows what he wants, he knows what he needs, and he knows who he wants, and he will do whatever he can to get to his goals, whether it be manipulating those he loves, or whether it be manipulating or yelling at his family. The other LGBTQ character in the show is Isabella, who is trans. For a manga that was originally written in the 90s, huge props for writing a trans character who isn't judged or made fun of by anyone. They may sometimes misgender by accident, but they are all extremely supportive of her, especially George, who makes fantastic dresses for her to wear and has inspired inspired her to become a pattern maker. She is an absolute queen, and I was always excited whenever she came on screen. Also, if you're at all remotely a fan of the series Nana, you will likely find a lot to enjoy here because it is by the same mangaka. This series is very grounded. All of the situations they go through are very realistic and very personal, and a lot of the emotions they feel are ones that I'm sure a lot of people watching could connect with. While the ending was a little rushed and some of the dialogue is a little dated. Whoa! Paradise Kiss is an excellent and gripping story that has a lot to offer for all types of audiences. I'll give this show and the representation both an 8 out of 10. The rep in this show was really solid, but we need more Isabella screen time, damn it. Also, a cool little fact is the guy that animated the end credits of this show later went on to direct Cyberpunk, and used a song from the same band as this ending, which is Franz Ferdinand, for those that know who that is. If you don't recognize them from name, you probably will from the song Take Me Out. This song is a renowned classic in the alternative community. So if you're lonely, you know I'm here waiting for you. Anyways, the next series I watched is Antique Bakery, which honestly is such a bizarre series. Keiichiro Tachibana is a talented son born into a wealthy family, and used to run his family business until one day he just decided to quit his job and open a pastry shop. The store is opened in a location that used to be an antique shop, and is filled with many old pieces of furniture, hence why it is called the Antique Bakery. The first person he gets to work at a store is an old classmate of his named Ono Yusuke, who is very openly gay and professed his love to Tachibana in high school, promptly being rejected and, told to kill himself. I'm not beating around the bush there. Before working here, he was fired from all of his jobs for either intentionally or unintentionally making customers obsessed with him, referring to himself as, quote, a devilish gay. The bakery takes on a world-renowned boxer who decides he wants to bake despite no culinary background, and a butler/childhood friend of Tachibana named Chikage, Kobayakawa, ends up joining them too. The author wrote this series as a shoujo romance but with all dudes instead of girls, and I gotta say, it shows. There are tons of shoujo cliches and tropes in the series that are subverted because of its male casts, and it makes for some very entertaining scenarios. I will say though, that the art style is very uninspired and bland. The anime has a tendency to use CGI constantly, and I really do mean constantly. Backgrounds, objects, doors, even cats. The budget must have been abysmal, because often the show is really not very appealing to look at, although the food always looks really banger. I really hope it did though, this is a food show. The direction is almost non-existent, and unfortunately, despite the interesting premise, the story itself is pretty boring. The pacing is slow sometimes, some of the jokes don't hit, and the drama can feel very mellow at points. To add to that, it taps into the surprisingly dark backstory of Tachibana from time to time, and I think that might have been the weakest point of this series. It leads to the tone being really inconsistent. Like, here, in 1 second the series is like, man, I love baking. And then to, when I was 5 years old, I was kidnapped. And, of course, that's really jarring. It's like complete tonal whiplash. It ends up fully committing to this kidnapping plotline later on, almost becoming a detective anime out of nowhere, which makes the earlier episodes even stranger because they're really comedic. Some of the detective stuff is also just a little too absurd, like he just breaks into somebody's house at one point. While it's not the most revolutionary series to ever grace the medium, it does its job decently enough, I guess, at being a cozy baking show, but I think its attempts to dive into a really deep story did not work very well along its avid attempts at comedy and wholesomeness. I'll give Antique Bakery a 3 out of 10. As for the representation, I kind of hinted at this, but it ends up really teetering the line between romance and fetishization. It's pretty bad in the first episode. Like, Ono, the gay character, forces himself on Tachibana, trying to kiss him. He only stops when he's firmly told to stop, which doesn't really settle very well with me personally. Besides that, he has a developing romance with the butler Chikage, who is bisexual. At least we assume so. We don't know if this is Ono being the devilish gay, making a straight man gay. I don't know. Which, now that I say it out loud, that does sound really bad. I do think that's probably a really bad part of the series. Ono gradually leaves his life of hooking up to commit more to Chikage, which is nice. It's sometimes sweet, and other times it unfortunately feels like it's idolizing the relationship without building them up at all, making it feel like it's purely for the sake of erotica. There is also a fair bit of homophobia and stereotyping in the series. Randomly, after dedicating an entire episode to him, Ono I mean, they kind of just abandon the fact that he's gay and that Chikage is possibly bi. After episode 6, they actually almost really don't even talk about their relationship, and they don't even really mention Ono being gay anymore, despite it being the primary focus of the first few episodes. This is really strange to me. It's almost like they were using this as a way to bait a certain demographic of viewers to keep watching the series. The one time they do mention it, it's about his sister accepting him, which is great, but like, why was it completely left out besides this? Overall, it's a pretty mixed bag, leaning a lot more towards the negative since it seems like a good case of queer baiting, so I'm gonna give the representation a 2 out of 10. Especially because Ono is probably not a very good portrayal of a gay character. And then after that, I watched number 6, and this was a series I had literally never heard of before I started making this video, which is probably something you'll hear me say a lot throughout the duration of this. A lot of these series are really underground. I gotta say though that I actually thought this series was pretty amazing. Being adapted from 9 light novels, number 6 is the story about a utopian society where the government essentially watches your every move. Think 1984. The world is split up into 6 sectors, and as the title might suggest, we mainly focus on Sector 6 for this series. After watching someone turn old and die in a matter of seconds, Shion begins to question his government, which puts his life in danger. He is saved by someone he actually saved as a child named Mnemosyne, and alongside him, Shion begins to uncover the secrets of the world and what number 6 truly is. This anime was delivered by Studio Bones shortly after they finished Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I will say it definitely shows because the art style is very similar. Being an 11-episode series, it is surprisingly perfectly paced. Nothing in the story feels like it's around for too short of a time or for too long of a time. The characters are pretty well written, with Mnemosyne and Shion being good foils for each other. Each character introduced matters to the story, there is great parallelism and world building, and what ends up happening in the story is mind-boggling. Number 6 is just a great depiction of a utopian society. The representation in the stories is also nothing short of great. One of the leads, Shion, seems like he is bisexual. We don't know if he likes girls or not, but we definitely know he likes boys, as we can clearly see the 2 leads show interest in each other early on, and we watch as they gradually fall for one another throughout the series.
Oh, that's nice.
Not to mention, one of the side characters is either most likely trans or non-binary. They never really specify which gender they are, but I could see it going either way. Much like the rest of the series on this list, the epilogue, Beyond, wasn't adapted with the rest of the series, meaning we don't get the entire ending, unfortunately. However, what we do get is still absolutely worth watching. I'm going to give both the representation and the overall score a 9 out of 10.
That there was a fine piece of work.
Satoshi Kon is easily one of my favorite directors of all time, and every work I've seen by him so far I've absolutely adored. I'm happy to say that the entry on this list, Tokyo Godfathers, is no exception to this. On Christmas Eve, Hana, Jin, and Miyuki, a trio of homeless people, find an abandoned baby in some garbage. Hana is horrified by whoever would have done something like this, and the 3 of them set out on a journey to find the baby's parents. Kon's works usually tend to be a bit darker, typically dealing with surrealism, nihilism, love and duality, like with Perfect Blue, Paranoia Agent, and Paprika. Tokyo Godfathers is a bit of a departure from his usual storytelling, as this one is very grounded in reality instead of focusing on something that is darker or, like, surreal. It highlights how those are shunned by society can be some of the greatest people around. It's a very uplifting and optimistic film for the future of society, and honestly, it is a really damn good Christmas movie. The trio are all great characters. The story unfolds in a way that is entertaining and actually pretty brilliant, and Tokyo Godfathers is certainly a movie I'd recommend to others. I will give it an overall 9 out of 10.
Delicious.
As far as representation goes, Kon gives an excellent depiction of a trans character in the form of Hana. Hana knows people will judge her in society, and she really doesn't give a shit. She doesn't let anything like that get her down, and she perseveres through it. Honestly, she ends up being the highlight and the heroine of the entire movie. There's also a bar that embraces LGBT people and culture, and Hana's dub voice actress is actually also a trans woman. It's very rare for something that was so long ago to represent these characters very well, and for an LGBT character to actually be played by someone in the LGBT. I will give a warning that if you do watch it sub, some translations for it are very poorly made and could be offensive, while some are great and don't include any of that. If you do go to watch it, try to find the G-Kids release from 2020 if you can, because that has the proper translations. It's a great watch though, it's really fun. This review might have been very vague, but that's because the movie is pretty straightforward. I think that anybody that watches this video will absolutely adore this movie, and I will give The Rep also a 10 out of 10. And then I watched Valkyrie Drive Mermaid. Mamori Takanome is a 16-year-old who randomly is kidnapped by the government when she's at high school. She awakes on an island, confused when she finds out that she's been infected with something called the ARMS virus. This virus is something that only women can be infected with, and there are two versions of it, the Liberator and the X-Tar. A Liberator's job is to, well, sexually arouse the X-Tar, and when they do, yeah, they turn into weapons. Since the entire premise revolves around arousal, the situations in it are borderline hentai. In some cases, like the last episode, they're just hentai. I will say that this show was surprisingly fun. Like, there were a lot of moments that I was laughing quite a bit at. I mean, come on, it's a show about people that turn into weapons when they're stimulated. The concept alone is really goofy. Although, this doesn't play into the anime's favor, as it definitely is not intending for it to be goofy. It's trying to come off as more of an action or drama series, when it really should have leaned much more into its comedic elements that were already present in the show's concept. The story ends up being really boring. The characters end up making me feel very uncomfortable most of the time, because it's pretty weird for them to just be sitting there talking, then all of a sudden whip out somebody's tits and start kissing them and then have them turn into like a fucking AK. I don't know, it was not my jam. There isn't a whole lot to talk about this show because it's kind of just the same thing every episode. Conflict happens, they make out, they turn into a weapon, conflict ceases, rinse and repeat until we find out why they're here or what the ARMS virus is. It's absolutely horny, but I guess, you know, it's okay to turn your brain off to, so I'll give it a 3 out of 10. There are worse things on this list story-wise. As for representation, let me preface, I'm no lesbian. I'm sure there will be some lesbians out there that fuck with this show so hard, and you know what? They are completely valid. However, for me personally, I definitely was not fucking with it so hard. A good portion of characters portrayed in the series are underage, including the two leads, so watching them, you know, feeling each other up and fondling each other's nipples was really awkward, to say the least. Honestly felt pretty illegal. I hope my FBI agents don't come after me for that if they're watching this. But yeah, jokes aside, the representation is definitely, excuse me for using Twitter language, it's definitely problematic. The intent of the series was absolutely to fetishize the lesbian relationships, so because of that, I will give it a 1 out of 10, and I really would not recommend it because it's just uncomfortable to watch. Now, if there is one thing you take away from this video, one anime that you really do decide to go and watch, it needs to be Flip Flappers. Coconut is an average middle schooler struggling to decide which high school she'd like to go to when she meets a strange girl named Papika. After they meet, Coconut is dragged into a world called Pure Illusion, which is a series of alternate dimensions, each based around a certain theme. It could be an all-girl school horror journey, a snowy world with creatures, or a Mad Max-inspired adventure. Anything is possible through Pure Illusions. Once they arrive in the world, they must find crystal shards so they can make their deepest wishes come true. To put it simply, this series is absolutely insane. Flip Flappers is like if Madoka Magica, Evangelion, Dragon Ball Z, Fooly Cooly, and old fairy tales and mythological stories, any trigger anime, and Bloom Into You had a baby. All of those concepts don't sound too great together, they don't sound like they would work, but trust me, they absolutely work. The series is a fantastic coming-of-age and gay love story that presents itself as a surreal, almost acid drug-like trip wonderland. There's no other way to really describe it besides it being a wonderland, because all of the scenery in this show is gorgeous and like that out of like your wildest imaginations. Each episode has a layered story that is almost self-contained with a crazy amount of depth that can provide hours of analysis for those that really like to dig into shows and their themes. There's dives into id, ego, and superego, commentary on the collective consciousness, ideas of Jungian psychoanalysis, mentions of Gestalt psychology and Umwelt. There's an insane amount of attention to detail to thematics in here. I could very easily make a myriad of videos picking apart this series that could do a minimum of like 20 minutes each. There is just that much hidden in each episode of this series. It's very clear that Studio 3 Hertz loved making Flip Flappers, because not only, like I mentioned earlier, is the scenery gorgeous, the art style and the animation goes way too hard in this series. Each theme, each character, and especially with Pure Illusion Worlds, feels as if it's alive and breathing. The series just oozes creativity from every nook and cranny of each frame. And did I mention the animation? Like, seriously, look at this, it goes so hard. The soundtrack is perfect and fits every scene like icing on a cake. They're also very pleasant to listen to on your own time. Like, I've caught myself listening to a few of these tracks, especially the opening and the ending, very often. The characters are all great. Each character is fully realized and fleshed out throughout the series. And did I mention the animation? There is just so much creativity put into this show. There's so much to appreciate. How are more people not talking about this show? Well, okay, there is one umbrella problem that could definitely deter people from the series. That being Flip Flappers really teeters the line of sexualizing the characters. More times than not, Flip Flappers thankfully doesn't cross this line, but its 8th episode absolutely crosses this line and could be too much for some viewers at times. Besides the 8th episode, there are moments that don't appear to be sexual in nature, but I'm sure it could be classified as fan service to some people. And of course, the biggest contributor to this problem is one of the side characters named Buchan. Their whole thing is that they're a gag robot character that's perverted. You know, we've all heard of this before. This is an old classic anime trope from mostly the early 2000s. It's obvious what the intent is, but like, come on man. That doesn't make their inclusion in the cast any less annoying. They don't need to be here. Also, these evil cult guys look like another evil cult.
The Ku Klux Klan!
If you can manage to get past these unfortunate parts of the series, Flip Flappers has so much to offer any viewer. Whether you absolutely dig references and homages to things such as Gundam, Ghibli films, Dragon Ball as I mentioned earlier, or other series, you'll find a lot here. There is a lot of appreciation to other anime. Whether you love looking to the philosophies or deeper mythos of characters and episodes, there's a ton here for you to unpack in every 24-minute episode. Whether you love seeing kick-ass animation or LSD acid adjacent visuals, this series has plenty of them. Or whether you like just seeing a wholesome developing Yuri romance, Flip Flappers has something that everyone can love and appreciate. Minus the fan service, Flip Flappers provided literally everything I love about anime as a medium, along with a fucking wild story that I thought was really brilliant. I am giving the overall rating a strong 10 out of 10. This show deserves a fan base and a community, and the subreddit is really tiny, and I would love to have more people talking about it. If you do decide to watch it, there's a lot of after credit scenes, so be ready to stay all the way until the end of the episode. The representation for the series is both great and also kind of weird. For the most part, it's very cute exploration of their feelings for one another, as Paprika is very in love with Kokona, and Kokona is hesitant to fall in love, but she gradually moves that way the entire series. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's overt, all of the time it's sweet. However, there's a revelation towards the end that makes it feel pretty strange. I won't get into spoilers, but I'm honestly still not sure how I feel about it. Besides that, there's another character in this series that is a lesbian fighting for her love, and I thought she was done very well. If enough people end up watching this series that watch this video, I would love to make a video on the ending to talk about what I think it means, or other videos regarding it. But for now, the representation in the series gets a light 8 out of 10. With an asterisk, because this could either go up or down, depending on what I find. I do hope you guys go check out this series, because I would love to see more people talking about it. And then I watched Revolutionary Girl Utena, and fuck yeah. Oh yeah, this series kicks ass. Man, where to even start with this? No, seriously. Like, where do I even start? The series follows our tomboy Tenjo Utena, who doesn't care if she's a girl because she wants to be a prince, and wears boy uniforms. Absolutely based. She came to the school Otori Academy to meet a prince that inspired her to want to become one many years ago because he saved her life and gave her a rose crest ring. The ring ends up getting her tied into a duel for the Rose Bride, and the bride holds the power to revolution that could break the world's shell. I guarantee some of you may have heard of this series before, and for good reason. It tackles a hell of a lot of topics that over time have becoming increasingly more relevant. Feminism, gender norms and societal roles, sexuality and the struggles that can come with it, trauma of all forms and sizes, along with strong ambition and desire, have led it to not only become a cult classic, but one of the biggest landmarks for LGBT anime. Please take note of all the things that I just said though, because if you didn't see it already, there's a lot of content warnings with this show. I didn't even get to be able to fit all of them onto the screen because there are just that many of them. They are not very graphic or like obscene, but they're there and they will definitely make people uncomfortable. Anyways, all of the characters are extremely thought out, with all of them having meaningful and sometimes brilliant character arcs as the show progresses. The show can be really funny at times, but it can also get very somber and dark. There is always something to enjoy or take away from this series. Utena is also unexpectedly super cinematic. Nearly every shot clearly had thought put into it in the way it was framed or the way the characters were placed, and can speak volumes on its own. The adaptation for this series is fantastic, much better than the manga. I've been told the manga is very different and cuts out a lot that the anime has in it, and can almost be viewed as a different entity. This is a show I definitely want to talk about more, but for the sake of this video's length, which it probably is already quite long, I won't talk about it here. I'm going to cut the review short. I plan to make a separate video dedicated to this series because it absolutely deserves it and has a lot of topics in it that definitely I want to talk about at length. Revolutionary Girl Utena, by all means, was extremely ahead of its time and is a show I absolutely recommend to everyone watching this video as long as you are comfortable with some of the topics that it will discuss. If you are worried about that, again, I was not able to include all of the content warnings here. I highly recommend you go look into it a little bit yourself because this series has a lot. It is surprisingly very heavy, and I don't want anybody watching it to get into something that they don't know they're getting into. Besides that, I'm giving both the representation and the show a firm 10 out of 10. Sasaki and Miyano, or Sasaki to Miyano, believe it or not, is a love story between two characters named Sasaki and Miyano.
No! It can't be!
Miyano is a feminine guy who finds he has a huge passion for boys love manga, becoming obsessed with it and Fudanashi/Fujiyoshi culture. For those that don't know what this is, these are just titles for fans of those genre, boys love, but they usually have heavy stigma around them, so Miyano is terrified for other people to know about his love for them. His upperclassman, Sasaki, takes interest in Miyano and wants to know everything about him, leading him to find out about his love for boys love stories. This surprises Miyano, and he's even more interested when Sasaki enjoys what he reads. This common interest of theirs would lead the two to become even closer and develop a relationship together. This series feels like Bloom Into You for the gays. Sasaki to Miyano is a romance story executed very well. I enjoyed the meta aspects of the series as it often calls to traditional boys love stereotypes and then either subverts or deconstructs them. I think it also gave a pretty accurate depiction of sexuality discovery, as when Miyano is questioning, he turns to boys love manga. I have many LGBTQ friends who used entertainment mediums like anime and manga to discover who they are, and seeing this happen with Miyano is very cute because it reminds me of what my friends once did. My only real complaint with this series is that oftentimes the story was a little too slow, or it was paced weirdly. It would either take its sweet time exploring one thing, and then it would jump around like with other things. Also, while it does a good job of subverting typical boys love stereotypes and tropes, it does still manage to fall into some of those tropes and stereotypes at times, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't really detract from the story. Besides that, Sasaki to Miyano is really pure, colorful, and sweet. I would definitely recommend it. I will give this show an overall 8 out of 10.
Nice.
And the representation will get a 10 out of 10 from me. And then I watched Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne, or Daughters of Mnemosyne. I don't know how to say that word, so I'm just going to say Rin, Daughters of. But leaving the title alone, this series is really, and I mean really weird. So Rin, Daughters of is a 6-episode supernatural sci-fi series, with each episode being around 45 minutes in length, which is crazy for anime. I'm not sure how to even really describe it. So, bear with me, please. Rin Asogai is an immortal and runs a private investigation bureau in Tokyo Shinjuku with Mimi, an immortal friend of hers. This series details some of her investigations over the years, while she's being hunted by Apos, an angel and also an immortal. So, I'm sure you're wondering, what do I mean by immortal? Rin Daughters of has an immortality system that is actually very interesting because it's like an allegory or maybe a metaphor for Christianity. A tree known as the, I don't know how to pronounce this, so just look at this word on screen. Yggdrasil? Yggdrasil? It's a tree. It's a giant fucking tree. Spreads spores all over the world called Fruit of Times, which when ingested has different effects based on the sex of the inhibitor. If a woman absorbs a Fruit of Time, they become immortal and can heal away any injury, living for pretty much as long as they choose to. If a man absorbs a Fruit of Time, they turn into an angel, which is kind of more like a biblically accurate angel. In appearance anyways, they don't share a ton of similarities. It just kind of looks similar. They are a being who lives for a maximum of a month, and their sole purpose becomes to hunt immortal women, and they look very fucked up. Immortals, when angel is present, cave into desire, stripping and begging to be eaten by them. Sounds pretty strange, right? As the premise might suggest, Rin is a little much. The creators of this series really thought that making a quote-unquote mature anime entailed it being edgy and horny, because my lord, does it have way too much of both. It's from the late 2000s and it really shows. I can vividly imagine some punk rock playing as a lot of violence and torture scenes play out. Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of weird torture scenes in the series. Rin Daughters of is also obsessively horny, having occasional fan service, outright nudity, a few SA scenes, and a multitude of sex scenes. They start off small but get ridiculous later on. There are strippers in the show that are there just to be strippers, of course, which is fine. There are girls that are tied up to giant kink devices that feel really weird to watch, and the main character has big breasts and they really want you to know that. I will say that this show is at least interesting to a degree. Each episode takes place in a different decade than the last. Since the girls are immortal, we get to see side characters age as we cover many different years and experience different genres along the way. Some of the episodes are actually pretty intriguing. Like one of the episodes is very ahead of its time, covering Japan becoming obsessed with virtual reality, but others are very boring. Recurring characters end up leading to very repetitive situations down the line. The soundtrack isn't that bad. Some of the song choices are pretty cool to listen to, but overall it's very forgettable. The animation is hit or miss. Some stuff is animated really well and other stuff is just okay. The art style felt a little bland, and this could be mistaken for many other shows. Sometimes it even felt like it was weird hentai. Overall, this show was just like fine, but it did lean a lot more into the bad territory, so I'll give it a 4 out of 10. You are essentially watching a B movie. It's very campy, it feels like it's trying to replicate the success of another franchise, but you really can't tell which because it's so vague in its execution. The series was interesting, like I said, to an extent, with a lot of elements that really didn't need to be in the series, which, speaking of those elements, the representation in the series is another entire beast, and I'd say it's pretty fucking bad. Rin seems to have a sexual relationship with another immortal girl named Mimi, but that fades away without getting any real attention to it. All we ever see is them making out and them groping each other, but then they just one episode don't interact with each other as much or in that same manner anymore, making you question what the point was of it even being there in the first place. There's a lot of lesbian action in this series, but it is entirely sexual. It seems to be entirely for the enjoyment of male audiences. Nothing is ever romantic. It is either sex scenes or it is unfortunately assault scenes. There is one immortal in the series that only gives information to the main cast by forcing them into having sex, either with her or with other girls, which is fucking weird. There's a trans character depiction that's only in the show for a few minutes, but I'd say that at least was done very respectfully. The antagonist of the series, Apos, is intersex, and I gotta say, he's a pretty good villain. Because he's intersex, Apos can possess both the qualities of an angel and an immortal, and I think that was a really interesting way to play with the immortality system. But outside of Apos, most of the representation in the series is just so bad and uncomfortable that I couldn't bear to watch it. Especially the stuff with Mimi. We don't know for certain what age she is meant to be in. We don't know when she got hit with this immortality, but she looks like a child, and that's very strange because she's placed in a lot of sexual scenarios and also partakes in stuff like wearing maid outfits, which is obviously fetish content, so that's pretty strange. Again though, going back to those torture scenes, Rin finds herself in saw traps essentially from other lesbians quite often, and that was very strange. Rin, Daughters of, feels like it was animated with the male gaze in mind and made purely to sexualize women, so I'm gonna give the representation probably a 1 out of 10. There is not much here that is redeemable. Then I watched Yurikuma Arashi. A long time ago, humanoid bears and humans lived peacefully together. But that all changed one day when a meteor shower over the earth made all the bears become violent and start craving human flesh. This created a war between humans and bears, causing them to build a wall between the worlds to keep them from each other. One day, the wall is breached and bears come through. After finding out they've infiltrated their school, it's up to Kurohei Tsubaki to protect her relationship with Sumiki Izumino from the ever-looming threat of the bears. However, the bears look just like humans, so the series becomes basically Among Us. There are body reports at the beginning of each episode to see who all have been killed so far. There's even something called a purging ritual, which is them basically voting on who the bear is. All jokes aside, I had a really rough time watching this series at first. The first 3 episodes are very weirdly paced and have a lot of fan service, and it's very surreal to the point that it feels almost absurd. I actually got very close to dropping this show, but was told not to by some friends, and that it got better on episode 4. So I stuck it out for one more, and I didn't regret my decision. Yurikuma is an extremely creative and ambitious deconstruction of how Japan treats lesbian relationships, along with criticisms of mob mentality and bullying, the harm that can come from zealotry, which also could be a nod to religious arguments against gay relations, institutionalized oppression via means of the Wall of Severance, and much more. There's actually a lot in a show about bears that want to eat people. There is probably a lot that I missed because this show has so many visual metaphors that it was really hard to keep up with all of them. All of this is coupled with some great dark humor, very good visual gags, and a super sweet romance story. This is another series like Utena where you can tell the director clearly had a vision going into it, which also bringing up that director, they actually were the same. I just found this out while I was actually still making this script, but the director for Utena and Yurikuma are actually the same person, Kunihiko Ikuhara. Great job. Appreciate this guy for telling some great gay stories. Anyways, a lot of the things in the series are framed very perfectly and with artistic intent, usually with the scenes having multiple layers of depth to them, so I gotta give props to the director. My only issue with the series is although the story gets better, the naked minors stay the same. You can argue that some of these are meant to be artistic or metaphorical somehow, but some of these are just outright uncomfortable to watch. While this show was initially hard to watch, I'm very glad that I stuck around until the end. It was a very meaningful and precious series that I'm sad seems to be as overlooked as it is. Yurikuma will get an overall score of an 8 out of 10 from me. As for representation, I gotta say, I think it's pretty perfect. We have a lot of lesbians that are all fleshed out and developed, trying to express how true their feelings are. However, there is one thing that's holding it back from getting a 10 from me personally, and that's the amount of nudity in this series. There are just so many minors in this that are just bearing all. No pun intended. That it was beyond frustrating. I've seen some say that it plays into the message of the series, and while I'm sure to some degree that is true, I do not want to see 2 underage girls biting each other's toes. No, thank you. Although I will say this aspect of the series, I might not be the right person to try and critique this. And if you can make it through some of the nudity, this series has probably the best lesbian representation I've ever seen. As I mentioned earlier, the series critiques how Japan treats woman-loving woman relationships, and even calls into question harmful Yuri tropes. Yurikuma could almost be seen as a call to action, that some of these things need to be changed soon. Although I will say this is through my lens. One of my patrons gave me their analysis of it. Kudos to Jim, love Jim, which is, quote, it's fan service, but the discomfort, the idea that this is something you should see or enjoy, is the same discomfort many queer folks go through finding their sexuality and partner preferences, and even their own bodies. So there are totally elements of it that I could not pick up on or fully understand in the series as a straight cis individual, which this could be said for many of the series on here. I'm sure that a lot of you guys will have differing opinions from me, and there's nothing wrong with that. I encourage you to share them with me. With that being said though, I will give the representation a 9 out of 10.
Hey, that's pretty good.
I'm still going to stray away from a 10 because while I can see from the other angle, I am still going to stick with the repeated nude miters being a downside to this otherwise perfect series. Then I watch Wandering Sun. This one I have the most to say about probably all of the series I've watched, at least in this video. Assigned male at birth, Nitori wants to present themselves as a girl, and assigned female at birth, Takatsuki wants to present themselves as a boy. The two become friends and help each other with figuring out who they really are. Wandering Sun is a story intended to be a coming-to-age tale about gender identity exploration. A story that sounds in theory as if it should be a masterclass of animation, but one that I'm actually very conflicted about. Before watching this series, I had actually read some of the manga, and was a big fan of what I read. When I started watching the anime though, I quickly realized that this was not what I remembered. For whatever reason, the anime's adaptation of episode 1 starts at chapter 33 of the manga. This is an incredibly weird decision, and results in extreme loss in nuances with the characters and their relationships with one another. Because of this, I'm actually going to talk a lot about the manga here, because I think that they did a lot of disjustice. A great example is the main character's sister. She is presented in the anime as transphobic, when in the manga, when someone makes fun of Nitori, she beats them up. She does get jealous later on, but it's because her crush is very interested in Nitori. And down the line, she does say some hurtful stuff, but she starts out supportive. And even throughout the series, she's presented as being concerned for her sister growing up. She knows that Nitori will be made fun of at some point, and doesn't want that to happen. Of course, this isn't really how she's presented in the anime. In the anime, she seems kind of disgusted by what Nitori is doing. The relationship dynamic is completely lost and misconstrued because of how it was adapted. I understand that this change may make the story more relatable to some, but it makes the overall narrative kind of wonky because even though that she is changed, things around her stay the same. This is just one relationship of several that are almost completely butchered by skipping the beginning of the series. It leads to the characters feeling unreasonable, incomprehensible, and to us missing really crucial moments. Like we never get to see the euphoria that Takatsuki and Nitori feel when they first begin to cross-dress because that's present in the manga, not in the anime, which is seriously a bummer. Where the anime picks up, they have already done it for a little while. And while that isn't the biggest issue, it's knowing what could have been instead of what we got. Not to mention, the series starts off after the majority of the characters just had a huge falling out, and it doesn't really elaborate on it at all. If you didn't read the manga, you might not have any idea what's supposed to be going on here. A lot of side characters are introduced but either forgotten or left underdeveloped. And the entire reason Takatsuki says Nitori should write the play for their class is because Nitori had been writing stories in their exchange journal, which was cut. There's also small things like Nitori's sister wanting to become a model and her appreciation for Maiko, a fellow modeler, the entire subplot with an adult trans character, which unlike Nitori's sister wanting to become a model, this is actually a pretty major part of the story. She's a huge deal in the manga. Even if the subplot is a little complex, I feel like ignoring her here is strange. Not to mention that with an 11 episode runtime, the show is very quickly paced, and this does not help the fact that it already skips the entire beginning of the story and cuts out a ton of details that really are crucial for knowing what's happening. To try to fix the weird pacing issues, they do a lot of anime original scenes or adapt scenes from the beginning in a context that doesn't make sense. A good example is, again, with Nitori's sister. At the beginning of the manga, Nitori has a nightmare that she comes into the room while they're cross-dressing. It is just a nightmare, which is understandable, because one of the biggest worries of someone experiencing identity issues is getting pulled out of the closet before they're ready, or being judged by their loved ones because they just want to be accepted. In the anime, they turn this into an actual fight between the siblings in the first episode, which again feeds into them making her transphobic. I will say that the way it's presented is going to be very relatable for some, because I'm sure many trans folks have had outright fights with their siblings over their identity. Siblings aren't always supportive. That's something that is just very realistic, but that wasn't what was in the initial source material, and that is one aspect that leaves me very conflicted about this, because while it does make sense, while it is real, it again fucks with the overall story. So do you go for realism or do you go for narrative? The anime original scenes, along with the cut content, actually make it feel sometimes like the plot doesn't progress at all. To make matters worse, the anime ends at chapter 82 of the manga. making it about as incomplete of an adaptation as it can get. Of course, I can't completely blame the anime studio because they adapted a manga 2 years before it would finish its serialization, but of course, most people probably won't go read the manga and will assume that this is the entire story. While the anime still did have some genuinely wholesome or cute moments, the story for the most part had a lot of holes in it. It was very quickly paced because of the runtime unfortunately not being long enough. Things didn't feel like they made complete sense narratively sometimes, and a lot of moments were missing that I wish were present. I think it's hard to recommend this over the manga. I'm not saying that Wandering Sun is the worst series ever. I believe there is still good in this. And part of me was worried that I was just so conflicted about the differences between the manga and the anime, so I went and asked r/ask transgender. The overall consensus is that the anime is not the best adaptation. In fact, there are actually a handful of people saying that they didn't really particularly like the anime that hadn't read the manga. A long time ago, back when I was reading the manga, I had a friend watch the anime because I figured they would resonate with them really well. And that person came out of the anime absolutely hating it, but realizing they were non-binary. Since I began working on this video, I had a friend who was trans mask watch it and really didn't like the second half of the series for reasons I'll go through in the representation section. I had a trans femme friend watch it who hated the series the entire way through for, again, reasons I'll go through in the representation section. And I had one friend who was also trans femme watch it and loved the series. So needless to say, I am not the only person on the internet that is very conflicted about Wandering Sun. I did manage to find some enjoyment with the watch. As much as I just complained about it, I didn't hate what I ended up watching. The visuals were very pretty. I liked the score, the opening was great. I felt the voice actors were good in their performance. It's just the story was not there. I know I really haven't talked on it much here, and that's just because I didn't want to be repetitive, and also because the representation it's a lot to talk about. It also really hinders the story pretty dramatically. All I'll say for now that I'll talk about later is that they make this all seem like it's a phase for these characters. It's because of how conflicted I am and how conflicted other people seem to be about whether this is a good story or not. I'm going to give the overall a 5 out of 10. I want to preface that's not a bad score. 5 out of 10 is like average. It's right in the middle. This series has some good in it, but it also has some bad. And I think it depends on the person whether the good outweighs the bad or the bad outweighs the good. The representation for this series is also a bit of a mixed bag. I will preface that this is my opinion. The community response, specifically this part of the series, is very mixed, so you could have a very different opinion about this show and about what I'm about to say. Despite the premise of the entire series being an exploration of gender identity and youth, there is very little exploration of gender identity until the last few episodes. The series instead opts more to focus on a very strange and almost forceful love triangle, multiple of them actually, and character dramas. Like I said, the manga shows them cross-dressing frequently and how excited and overjoyed they get. We get to see the responses to certain sex traits like periods and wet dreams, which results in them being very uncomfortable because it's not what they want to happen to them, because it's not who they feel they are, and them dreading going through any further stages of puberty. Which for whatever reason, a lot of this was just not in the anime compared to the manga, and I don't know why. Once we actually get towards the end of the anime, the gender identity journey is great, but I feel like seeing the beginning along with some parts of the middle and the end would have been much better, instead of just seeing the last bit of it. Not to mention, this ending of course isn't the actual ending for Nitori. The way it ends, it seems like Nitori accepts the bullying to stay male and not be true to herself. I don't even know if I necessarily need to explain why this is bad, but I'm gonna do it anyways because this ending really made me angry the first time I watched it, and it still does thinking back on it. So the way this series closes suggests that bullying people will keep them from being who they really want to be, which is a bad message, and it's going to make people not want to go and dig out there for who they really are. Not to mention, this really plays into a stereotype that I see developing for transgender folks, which is suggesting that it is just a phase. They are just experimenting, and sometimes this seems to be seen for attention, and then once they've gone through it all, they drop it like it's a toy from Toy Story, like that Woody scene. But of course, there are 40 chapters of the manga that aren't adapted yet. I went ahead and spoiled the ending of the manga for myself because I also haven't finished it, since I needed to know what happened for this review. So, light spoiler here, the manga's final page is Nitori writing an autobiography titled, quote, I Am a Girl, and Anna says that she's a lesbian now while accepting Nitori. The anime did not convey this well, and made it almost seem like this was a phase for both Nitori and for Takatsuki, but speaking of Takatsuki, who is the trans mask character, his story is handled very strangely. The show never really knows what it wants to do with him, and while this could be intended to just be internal transphobia or confusion, it never comes off that way. He knows that he wants to be a male really badly, and he doesn't want any female secondary sex traits. However, despite them not wanting these traits, they seem to just go back to being a cis girl out of the blue when we have all of this build up towards this not being what they want, which again makes it feel like they're pushing this being a phase, and that's not good. We never get to see much about him in the anime, and I think that's a damn shame. There's another trans girl in the series named Mako, who unfortunately never gets the attention she deserves in the anime. Instead, they make her troubles seem like she only wants to be a girl to like guys, which just isn't the case. As I mentioned earlier, this series has an adult transgender woman who is almost a mainstay in the manga, while she is mostly absent from the anime. We do have a really fantastic ally to Notori's exploration, who I mentioned earlier, is Anna. She's Notori's girlfriend that's introduced from the modeling friend that her sister liked, and she is a fantastic character. This series has quite a bit of supportive characters in it, which I think is really nice. Occasionally the support for Notori though could end up almost feeling fetishy. I think the best example of this is through the character Chiba, which made me feel uncomfortable. Chiba loves putting Notori in dresses, but it leans very hard into the weird territory with how much she enjoys doing it and being almost forceful in her approach and getting Notori in dresses. Also, there are of course some situations in here that are very real. They could be super relatable to many, whether it be painful or in a good way, which isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Of course, it just depends on the viewer. But there really is so much in the manga that is just not present in the anime, which makes it feel like they are almost scared to touch the true subject of this series at all. While they end up doing Notori some justice in the end of the series, the overall representation feels confusing. They lack with the trans adult character, they lack with Mako, with Takatsuki, with Notori. A lot of it feels very hollow. I also, again, just really don't like that they suggest that this is a phase for these characters. We obviously know that isn't the case because of the extent of the manga. But even still, despite everything I just said, I know there are people that are going to watch this and find themselves in this series, or see themselves in it. And it's because of that I feel like this also deserves a 5 out of 10. I know people will like it, but I know there are going to be people that see this and absolutely hate what they're watching. I just can't discount the people that will love this series. For me personally, and my friends and people I've talked to, that's just not for us. But if you're watching this video and you watch this series, or you have watched this series and you love it, that's understandable, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's clear the author had good intentions with this story and got cold feet in some parts, but I'm sure there is still a lot that trans people could get out of watching this series, so I don't want to completely discount it. I would definitely recommend the manga over this because what I have read, I love. I think it's genuinely really good. Yes, there are still some parts that aren't phenomenal, but it's just so much better than what they gave us in this adaptation. And yes, I did say what I have read. A long time ago, I actually stopped reading the manga because that non-binary friend I told you about, after they had watched the series, I thought it was garbage because I assumed that the manga was like directly adapted in the anime. So I stopped. I didn't want to get to a point where I was going to be as upset as they were. And I've heard that even the ending of the manga isn't handled the best, involving Takatsuki. Do I want to blame this series? Yes and no. Obviously, it could have been done better, but unfortunately, this is just how Japan is. They do not treat their transgender folks the best. I'm sure many of you remembered that this video was originally supposed to be an addressing of homosexuality and gender identity in Japan, but that topic was way too big, and originally this video was supposed to be going out during Pride, and I wanted to have something that was more uplifting instead of more negative. My final remarks regarding the series is I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it. If you struggle with gender identity, dysphoria, or are trans yourself, consume this series with caution. It could be beautiful to some of you, but very triggering and harmful to others. And then I watched Sakura Trick. This show has two best friends, Yu and Haruka, kiss and kiss, and kiss, and make out. And then they make out some more. You might ask, Hunter, surely that can't be all this show offers. You're right, there is more. Side characters also kiss each other. The kissing pretty much becomes exclusively making out, and the show is full of zoom-ins on characters' chests while they bounce, and their ass and their legs while they walk. It sucks. Normally, I'm a slice of life guy, but this is the first series where I understood why people don't like slice of life. There is literally no story to this show. It is all fan service and girls making out. Every episode is essentially split into 2 parts. The first part is the characters talking, hanging out, showing shots of their ass and their tits. And then someone kisses or makes out. And then the second part is the exact same thing. I have almost nothing to talk about regarding the show because I learned more about the characters' cup sizes than who they are as people. The relationships seem to happen for pretty much no reason. The comedy in this show never lands. Everything about it is just dull. Sakura Trick is ass. The overall story is getting a 1 out of 10. Fuck Sakura Trick. The representation, I'll be given a 2 though, because to me, while the intent seems to be to fetishize lesbian relationships, again, I'm not a lesbian. I'm sure some lesbians will love how pure this show can be sometimes. However, giving it a score any higher is impossible because it's clear the show is animated with the male gaze in mind, and there's just a lot of fan service. There are girls rubbing desks in you know what kind of way. Excessive groping, upskirts. There's just so much sexualizing of characters that are middle schoolers, which is pretty disgusting. Like, no, I do not want to see this 12-year-old make out with another 12-year-old after having just bounced their boobs around and shake their skirts suggestively. I kind of doubt outside of like voice acting that any women actually worked on the show because it feels like a guy's wet dream. There's also probably fetish content in here that I didn't pick up on. Some that I did was there's some weird moments with feet, and there is an episode with some questionable school swimsuit stuff. So you know what? I'm actually going to give this a 1 out of 10. I think it's just almost undeniable that the series was made to fetishize lesbians, and God, it's just painful to watch. Seriously, just go watch anything else. This series fucking sucks. Yuri on Ice is actually a show I've got a surprising amount to say about. So I'll talk a little bit more about this one than other ones, but not more than Wandering Sun. I'll be the first to say it, I've talked a lot of shit about this show over the years because I bought into the hate for it winning the anime awards way back when, and the fandom had a pretty negative reputation surrounding it. That stigma of them, of course, over the years has dialed down, but I wasn't sure how I would actually feel about the show, so I stayed away from it. To my surprise, after having actually watched it, I was quite enthralled by Yuri on Ice. Yuri Katsuki flops horribly at the Grand Prix finale, which is the World Championships essentially for figure skating. After his defeat, he goes back home and plans to give up, but the world's best figure skater, Viktor Nikiforov, appears at his home declaring that he will become Yuri's coach. Yuri on Ice is a breathtakingly animated show accompanied by a fantastic soundtrack that makes every performance feel like it's breaking the barriers of animation. I was extremely invested in Yuri's growth to become the best, and I actually really enjoyed watching how each time Yuri skated, he would explore his sexuality. This show also randomly is really funny. Like, some of the line deliveries make me laugh from how out of nowhere they were.
What did he say?
I learned a surprising amount about ice skating by watching the show too. I had no clue what a Lutz was, or toe loops, or salcho. I'd definitely seen them all before but was never able to put a name to it. I think them grading a performance behind the story and your moves, on top of the amount of proficiency you have with your jumps, is really cool. The supporting cast is also amazing. However, I do think this show would have really benefited from being a bit longer. This series is paced really perfectly until about the midpoint, like episode 5 or 6, and then it really starts to speed through its own story. Much of the supporting cast, even if they have very solid foundations and are likable characters, are hardly developed or touched on, only really given one performance to explore who they are. Otebek is a really cool character who was introduced in the last few episodes, and I honestly would have really liked to see more of him. There's a character introduced that's Korean that I don't think we really get to learn a single thing about them. I don't even remember their name. And JJ is a character that, in my opinion, is probably the best in the entire show, but didn't get the proper screen time he needed to fully explore him. An audience member would have to look into, say, the theme of King JJ to fully be able to grasp his story, and even then you wouldn't be able to get the full picture since a lot of it seems to have been rushed out. I sobbed during one of his scenes in the later part of the story because of how much emotion was put into his performance, and the crowd wanting to see him succeed so desperately. You could just feel it. He didn't want to let them down, and it was just so admirable to see him pushing through his anxiety that he was feeling to the best he could. More episodes also would have been nice because we'd have a bit more downtime with everyone. I briefly mentioned it, but after about episodes 5 or 6, most of the show becomes about tournaments and we hardly ever get to see the cast outside of them, which feels a bit like Whiplash because they make you really want to care about these people and then immediately move on to the next thing in the tournament without really diving into them at all. There's nothing to chew on. Every character in the show is a different ethnicity or from a different country. It essentially embraces diversity. This is awesome. I love the fact that the series does this. However, I wish they had done what they did with The Great Pretender, where they balanced a multitude of languages and cultures like Japanese, English, French, Russian, and Chinese. They did this in the last episode, but I wish they had done it more because having everyone from every country speak perfect Japanese just seemed a little unrealistic to me. Something else that also bugged me about this series was at the beginning, they constantly would comment about Yuri's weight. I have no clue why, but it's a reoccurring joke, I think is what they're trying to pass it off as, and it ties in with his skating too. But after a point, it goes away and it's not really in the show anymore because Yuri loses weight, so it makes you wonder what the point of it even was. Like, was it there to help him get skating? Was it there to be a gag? Or was it there to make certain people feel uncomfortable? I don't know. It's a pretty strange narrative decision if you ask me. Although, despite all of my complaints, I actually think this series is pretty banger. I walked in expecting to hate, but I walked out a fan. So for the overall story, I'm gonna give it a 7. I think that despite some flaws the series has, Yuri on Ice is still a very enjoyable watch. It's just a bit frustrating because this series had everything it needed nearly to be a top tier show, and either wasn't given the time it needed to reach that potential, or is in need of a sequel season. I know it has its movie announced, so perhaps that will fix my narrative issues with the series, because it is just so close. As for the representation for this show, it's another one that's a little complicated. Victor and Yuri are hardly really given the time they need to flesh out a solid romance. Instead, a decent portion of screen time is dedicated to what I have dubbed man service moments. While the two obviously do have feelings for each other, it's kept very surface level instead of getting its chance to be fully explored. Light spoilers here for the series. They kiss in one of the episodes, but in the official release it was censored or changed. Versions of what actually happened were supposed to have surfaced online. We don't know if these are canon or not, but they seem very realistic. The fact that it was censored, though, doesn't sit well with me. The same could be said when they give each other rings. The anime poses this almost as an engagement, but Yuri dismisses them as marriage rings and says they are good luck rings. The writer herself has gone on to say that whether they were kissing or whether they weren't is up to interpretation, and that their rings are definitely supposed to be protective charms. Although they heavily hinted at being romantic, it just felt weird. I mean, every time they took a step forward, it felt like they took a step back or tried to make it seem like it wasn't romantic. The whole, they were just friends bullshit. Plus, this could just because I'm a YouTuber and I've grown up on YouTube and seeing how relationships with fans turn out, but it was really strange to me at least that Yuri fell in love with his childhood idol and his coach. It really does feel like a YouTuber dating a fan, and it's jarring to say the least. However, it is very clear that the two mutually admire one another and are on the path to romance. This show is absolutely gay, that's undeniable, but it feels like it's lacking in parts, mostly due to the author's hesitancy with their relationship. This irritated me because we've seen that anime has no issue being open to gay relationships. Why are we teetering the line so much here, especially when it's definitely going to be gay? I'm not entirely sure it's fair to judge this relationship fully because, like I said earlier, a movie is actually planned for the series, so it's clear the story isn't over and they could end up going farther with their romance. This is just my opinion though. I encourage you to watch the show for yourself and form your own thoughts about it. Hello all, Future Hunter here. Literally while I was working on this video, they actually canceled the movie. Yeah, fuck everything I just said. Their reasons are very vague, and it's weird to me that they'd announced now to cancel it since it's been years that it was announced. But I gotta say, this doesn't help me feeling like they were hesitant with a lot of the gay elements in it. It seems there was a disagreement between the author, MAPPA, and or the producers, but we're never going to truly know what happened. This also retroactively makes the story much worse because it ends with you assuming that there's going to be more. Yuri has not reached the end of his story, and there's obviously going to be more to their romance, but we're never going to get any of that. I'm not going to go back and change my rating for the story, but this is a bummer. This really actually seriously bums me out, and I bet a bunch of people out there feel the same way that I do. But that's enough for Future Hunter. Let's get back to the actual video. It's undeniable how gay most of the show is, and it's a landmark for LGBT representation in anime. Even if the kissing and some of their affection was kept to a bare minimum, and we will never know the full extent of the relationship, there isn't an excessive need to confirm how they feel about one another. And without this, I feel queer culture would have lost a big foot in the door in the anime community. I have to give credit where it's due. So this series rep will get a 7 out of 10 as well. And then I watched Happy Sugar Life. Take a look at those content warnings right below. These already seem pretty intense, right? Well, these are only a few of the content warnings for Happy Sugar Life. This series is in no way for the faint of heart. Sato Matsuzuka is our main character that's gotten a reputation for flying through boyfriends like it's nothing. But that changes one day when she meets and takes in Shio Kyubei. Her love for Shio is so strong that she decides to no longer pursue boys and will protect their quote-unquote happy sugar life at any cost. And I do mean literally every cost. At its core, Happy Sugar Life is a psychological horror anime that is an exploration of two ideas: what love means to someone and the effects of trauma on a person. With love, everyone in the series is trying to either understand what it means or to pursue something they love. They all have crazy obsessions. Sato will do anything for Shio, and she tries her best to understand her love for Shio. Daichi Katamagawa is a teacher, but is trying to find love through his students at school. Yeah. Taiyo Mitsuboshi goes through an extreme traumatic experience, and it has forever affected his outlook on love. The list goes on, but this leads into my next topic, the effects of trauma. Now, everyone in the series, to put it simply, is fucked up. They all have baggage involving people and situations that have shaped them into who they are now. And the series takes that trauma of those victims and essentially shows a worst case scenario version of it in a way that almost feels similar to school days. There are only 3 characters in this series that are truly meant to be likable, with one being Shio, another being Shio's brother Asahi, and the last being Sato's best friend Shoko. Shio is a victim of her situation, and stuff she's gone through is terrible. Asahi is a guy who has gone homeless and is just trying his best to get his sister back to him. And Shoko, well, for those that saw the series, we all know what happens with her. The rest of the cast involves a yandere pedophile, a crazy pedophile, a masochist teacher pedophile, a MILF pedophile, an obsessed stalker lesbian, and a fucking wild woman. Yeah, this series was something else. Sato is at least a really interesting case study because of her situation that created her, what she has become and what she does, and her mannerisms, decision making, and she's actually extremely intelligent. Unlike Loveless, which is boring, this one is at least entertaining. It felt very similar to the vein of Rent-a-Girlfriend, where I hate pretty much everything I'm watching, but at the same time, I can't stop watching it. While I do think there is some really good commentary on trauma in this series, most of it is just too irredeemable. Happy Sugar Life is obviously a tragedy, and meant to be disturbing to the viewers. But even so, this show does not get a pass. It has to be held to the same standards as all the other shows on this list. There is a lot of interesting things in here, but there is, of course, a lot of really bad stuff. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10 for story. The representation, for some reason, I'm gonna get a little heated about this, is hotly debated. I have no fucking clue why. Everyone that's consumed this series says something different, and I'll be up front and say it's horrible. There is one character who is obviously a bad portrayal of a lesbian, but the two leads are where the discourse comes from, oddly enough. Sato is the one who loves Shio and takes her in, and is 16 years old, whilst Shio is around 8 years old. Sato seems to feel both romantic and motherly love for Shio, as she had a bad situation growing up and wants to take care of Shio, but is seen enjoying kisses on the lips, them doing wedding vows and getting married with a kiss, and the protection of a wedding ring which nods to romance. I've also been told their relationship is more explicit in the manga, nodding way more to romance, and in bonus chapters, Shio seems to reciprocate these feelings. There is also a considerable age gap here, which makes Sato obviously a pedophile. I mean, come on. But for some reason, a lot of people seem to cope and say that she isn't. After finishing the series, I found many people saying Sato isn't a pedophile because her attraction isn't sexual and dog-like. Are you serious? It doesn't matter if it's sexual or romantic, you are still attracted to a literal child. A pedophile is a pedophile. I'm actually very concerned for some of the fan base in this series because other people say it's just an anime, that same argument people use to justify liking lollies. The internet scares me sometimes. I hope you guys get the help you need out there. But yeah, Sato and Shio's relationship is pretty gross. In some instances, grooming and entirely pedophilic. Sato has pretty much further traumatized Shio. There are so many people that try to say that Sato saved Shio's life, and that's literally not true. Sato has ruined her life. Like, let's take a look at those bonus chapters again, shall we? Spoilers for the series here. Sato fucking dies in the last episode, but Shio, 10 years later, she's 17, the age Sato died, still cannot move past her. She's telling people at her school that it's her first love, acting as if she's in a relationship with this person, states that she is madly in love with her, hallucinates them cuddling, kissing, and making out, and it ends with her hinting at her offering herself to come be with Sato. That's horrible. That is literally so awful. I know that's literally probably the point, but come on, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna say how it is. This is terrible stuff. And we, of course, got the other really bad lesbian in the series. It sucks. It's really bad. This series gets a 1 out of 10 for representation.
Oh, I was actually coming out here to pick up a cupcake.
I really do not understand how people try to defend this aspect of the series. And then I watched Given. Mafuyu Sato naps with a guitar that he has no idea how to play, but nonetheless he grips it as if he were going to die when he lets go of it. Ritsuka Uenoyama stumbles upon Mafuyu, and after helping him fix his guitar, is asked by Mafuyu to help him learn how to play. They later discover that Mafuyu is an amazing vocalist, and offer him the position of lead singer, to which he reluctantly agrees. From this point on, while learning the guitar, Mafuyu must overcome his past demons to be able to perform at an upcoming concert of theirs. Keep in mind while I discuss this that I've only watched the first season of Given, not the movie. I have no clue what happens in the movie. But this series at its core seems to be about healing. Mafuyu certainly went through something traumatic, and I think that overcoming it like he does is something very heartwarming. The supporting cast is very understanding of his troubles and his past, and they do what they can to help him through it while also helping him be the best musician that he can. The romance that develops in this is also nothing short of stellar because it feels super organic. Although, this does lead me to some criticisms I have about the series. One being that this is a very, very slowly paced story. I really didn't understand what the point of the series was until around 6 episodes in, but once we got to the point, things started to pick up and become a lot better. Even so, it still managed to make character tensions feel very melodramatic. I also have a big pet peeve when it comes to music, movies, and shows, and that is the characters playing their instruments. Take, for example, K-On! We only see the band perform a few times, but in Bocchi the Rock, we see Kasoku Band perform a myriad of times. I like to watch bands perform music in music anime. This show is classified as a music anime, and we only get to see the band perform one time in the entire show. That makes me sad. I wish we had gotten to see them play more often. However, the one time we do get to see them play is pretty amazing, as Mafuyu uses his performance as a medium to vent out a lot of his lingering emotions regarding the source of his trauma. It's a great moment in the series, and one that can make a person retroactively look at artists during concerts or performance of theirs a lot differently. Next is a big complaint I have about the series, but this could just be a me thing, and it involves discussion about one of the content warnings listed above. large spoilers here. Please skip to this timestamp if you do not want to listen to this, but I think it needs to be discussed. We find out near the midpoint of the series that Mafuyu struggles from the suicide of his boyfriend. This haunts him and affects his relationships with other people and his personal life. But even though he struggles so deeply, an event happens in the series that seems to completely make him get over it. Now, personally, I've experienced stuff similar to this, but it wasn't a partner in my case. It took me and the people around me a very long time to get over all of it, and I'm still not over one of them. I can only imagine how long it would take to get over the death of a partner. It seems very unrealistic that after acting a certain way most of the show, a simple snap of the fingers makes it better towards the end of the season, and he seems to almost move on from his past boyfriend. I guess everyone grieves and handles things differently, but I wasn't entirely sure how to feel about this aspect of Given. Although it is an element that other people could find very relatable, I feel like it probably is all dependent on the person. It could be explored later on in the series, but as I said earlier, everything on this list I only watched the first season of. With that out of the way, let's talk about something a little lighter, but still a little criticisms, because this show looks very strange sometimes. When the band finally performed, I was really distracted by the very obvious 3D models of the characters that I couldn't really pay attention to much else. I had to rewatch the performance to be able to fully appreciate it. There are weird, like, green screened explosions that happen sometimes in the series that feel really out of place too. For the most part though, the series is pleasant to look at. The characters, on the other hand, I did enjoy a lot. Ueno is a super funny guy and cares deeply for the people around him. Mafuyu can be a little one-note sometimes, but his struggles are totally understandable. What he's gone through is something that touches home for me. However, it's this same feeling of understanding what he's gone through that makes it all feel so unrealistic. The two college characters are also both fantastic. I'm happy to finally see some college characters in anime, man. It feels so rare. Given overall was a really solid show. I understand that with Mafuyu, I am just projecting my personal experiences onto the characters, and it is not fair to judge the story based off of this aspect, but my other grievances, like the pacing, some of the visuals, and the melodrama, lower the score some. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. It's still amazing. I highly recommend it to anyone watching this video. It is ongoing, as another season of the series was announced, so I'll be sure to check out the rest of it at a later date. Despite my minor nitpicks about how they handle Mafuyu's previous partner, the representation in this show I think is pretty perfect. A lot of the other gay anime I talked about previously in this video had at least one of the characters as a pretty feminine guy, whilst Given has two very straight-seeming masculine guys get together. While of course there is nothing wrong with feminine men, as I have been told I am one, it is really nice to see some masculine dudes falling in love with each other. This is a form of gay representation I feel we do not see enough of in media. The romances are grounded, built upon excellently, and come together in the end to be very satisfying. The characters are handled and written with respect, they go through real troubles that gay couples and individuals could face from their peers, and worries about societal judgment. It's just so well done, and I could see a ton of gay men relating to what Given has to offer. I'll give it a 10 out of 10 for a rep. Although I will say, I've heard there are some things that are dodgy or sensitive that are in the movie. So if you keep watching ahead, watch with caution, because I don't know what to expect, so I can't warn you. Oh, Citrus, what an infamous series you are. Please take note of the content warnings listed because this show plays with SA constantly. There are going to be a lot of visuals because this show has, again, a lot of this stuff in it, and I do not want to bring up bad memories for victims. If you are one, or if these topics are really sensitive to you, I highly suggest you skipping over this entry and going to the next one. Yuzu Aihara's mother remarries and results in her transferring to a new school, where here she is chastised for not following the rules and dressing inappropriately by the school council and president. She goes home later to her mom and finds out that the remarry has given her a new sister, and this sister is her new school's president. So the person yelling her out, that was her sister. After, doing something pretty illegal, Yuzu begins to question her sexuality and develops feelings for her new sister, Mei. Yeah, if you can't tell by the description I just gave, this series is really bad. I knew going into it that it would be bad, but I didn't expect it to be as bad as it was. Yuzu and Mei, the main lesbians of this series, meet each other by Mei forcing herself on the other and kind of groping Yuzu. She's supposed to be getting her phone, but we see her run her hands on Yuzu's ass, which is fucking weird. Not only that, but the first episode ends with a very, very explicit assault scene. Then that vibe persists into episode 2, then into episode 3. This behavior does dial down as the series progresses, but it absolutely feels like these scenes earlier on are either really out of place or meant to lure in a certain type of viewer base, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But it does kind of never really leave entirely, which feels kind of terrible to watch. I almost actually dropped the show when it happened in episode 1 because of how long it lasted. It goes on for an uncomfortable amount of time. Basically though, every character does something to another character that feels assaulty, and do I even need to say that that's pretty bad? The romance for this series for me personally felt impossible to root for. I mean, they're step-siblings, dude. Do I understand that they become sisters by chance after already spending years without knowing one another? Yeah. I do. Do I think that makes it any less weird? No. No, I don't. Yuzu's mind seems to bounce between, how can I become a good older sister, and how can I kiss my sister, very often, and I gotta say, I don't like that. If I had a friend that had a parent remarry, and then things got hot and steamy with their new step-sibling, I would think that's really fucking weird. It's literally the plot of most porn. You could go on the hub and find the exact plot of this anime there and probably have a better time than actually watching this show. It's also incredibly troubling that they constantly make each other a victim of, well, assault from one another, no less. And the one who's victimized the most is the one who ends up pursuing her assaulter. This is an awful element of the series that completely misrepresents victims. No one would want to be depicted this way, and they're out here idolizing it. Look at these two conventionally attractive anime characters kiss. Please ignore all the horrible undertones surrounding it. What a shit show. Like, come on. The drama in this series is also really bland. Here's what the plot boils down to essentially. A girl is introduced that is romantically interested in one of the main lesbians, either Yuzu or Mei. Then said girl causes a lot of meaningless tension for pretty much no reason, and then they dip. This drama pushes Mei and Yuzu closer together, leading Yuzu or Mei to make an advancement on one another, and for whoever is on the receiving end to reject the advancement. They rinse and repeat this cycle 3 times through the 12-episode runtime. If you cannot tell, I did not enjoy watching this in the slightest. There are multiple assault scenes. The romance is something you'd see on sites like Bang Bros, and all of the side characters are pretty terrible. It's just bad. The later half is a little more redeemable narratively though, I guess, but I feel like it's impossible to ignore how it handles assault and how it's a romance around incest, so I'll be giving Citrus a 1 out of 10. And yes, I am calling it incest. I know there's gonna be comments being like, Hunter, they're not related by blood, it's okay. And you know what? I feel like this is in the eye of the beholder. In this beholder's case, it's fucking incest. The representation, I will also, for obvious reasons, be giving a 1 out of 10. I understand that there are actually a decent amount of lesbians out there who love this series and find Yuzu and Sarah relatable. Like, I see you guys. I respect that you find enjoyment and feel represented here, but again, I cannot ignore how it handles assault. In no way is showcasing 2 siblings constantly forcing themselves on each other a good form of representation. I know, of course, down the line, the assault aspects of this show dial down, and the series tries to make the romance more palatable, but they still nose their way in here and there. And of course, even if they do go away and they're not as potent, why did they even need to be in the series regardless? This doesn't need to be in the story. Also, of course, we have lesbians who try to interfere with their romance, but not to stop from their unhealthy ways. No, they come in to ruin the relationship through manipulation and such. Sometimes they also engage in assault against our leads. I shouldn't have to say why this is a bad form of rep. A lot of the scenes and dynamics in this show are absolutely awful and would likely be very triggering for many. I'd also argue there's quite a bit of fan service in the series for no particular reason as well. So yeah, Citrus ain't it, folks. I've been told that the manga is different, but I've got no real drive to go and find out for myself if that's true or not. Classmates is a movie housing a budding relationship between a carefree boy in a band named Kusakabe and a quiet, reserved student named Seijo. Over the 60-minute runtime, we go through multiple short stories titled mostly by seasons and see as the relationship changes and grows. This movie is pretty wholesome, which is very much complemented by the poppy animation and the watercolor art style. A lot of the movie is eye candy, and the shot composition is no joke either. I enjoyed the characters. Seijo is unfortunately pretty much a hard and true trope. He is exactly what you imagine when you think of a quiet and reserved student. There isn't much nuance to him. Kusakabe, on the other hand, has a lot going for him. He's chaotic, he's rambunctious, but he's also really sweet and tender. The manga for this series is from 2006, but you can see pieces of the anime given, and some characterization similar to Sasaki from Sasaki to Miyano. Although I will say there are two complaints I had for this series. One being one of the teachers makes advancements on Seijo for no reason. It's pretty creepy, and it plays into, as I mentioned earlier with Loveless, really bad stereotypes. And the other is there are some kisses at the beginning that are a little unprompted. Besides that, it is a pretty straightforward romance story. It has tropes, stereotypes that are both good and bad, melodrama, and all the normal stuff you'd expect, but that doesn't make it bad. If you feel like just turning on something simple and sweet, this is perfect for you. Just turn off your brain and let the serene landscape take you on a romantic journey as these two boys find out what love is. Classmates will be getting a 7 out of 10 from
That'll do, donkey.
The representation, I'm gonna give an 8. I would give the series a 9 or 10, but the teacher being a pedo and the first few kisses hold it back from being any higher. Although these bits are very minor, they're still present in the series. Outside of these two downsides, the romance is very sweet, and it feels super real, and it involves them tackling possible judgments from others and themselves all the time. I'm sure there are many gay men and couples that could see themselves in these two. And the last show I watched was Devilman Crybaby. Wow. This show impacted me way more than I thought it would. Akira Fudo's childhood friend, Ryo Asuka, randomly appears in town after leaving to study abroad and asks for Akira's help. Akira has always had a bleeding heart, so he helps without any questions asked. Little did he know he would be crawling his way into a world much bigger than he imagined. As Ryo explains, demons are on the rise and the end of the world is in the near future. Ryo then makes Akira merge with the champion of demons, Amon. Normally, this merge would make the demon take over the host's body, but with Akira's case, he maintains control and just gains the demon's abilities, turning him into a Devilman. From here on out, Ryo and Akira would journey to defeat and kill demons to stop the end of the world. Devilman Crybaby is consistently a show that I'd heard good things about, but man, I had no idea it was going to be this good. The show has everything I love in anime, just like Flip Flappers did. It's a surreal, psychedelic cluster. There are raves that are super colorful, and then there are depressing scenes that are the embodiment of bleakness, and then there are just normal conversations that are very engaging, which I find very rare for most forms of media. The direction is brilliant. It's directed by Masaaki Yuasa, who some of you may know for directing the Tatami Galaxy. A large portion of this anime has heavy thought put into composition of scenes and animation as well. Majority of the visuals or beats in the show mean something far deeper than a viewer might realize, whether it be a room number, a small smile, or a pair of sunglasses. Even these rappers, who an audience member could be quick to dismiss, end up being similar to the muses from Greek mythology. It's amazing. There is a lot of reward here for rewatching. Also, I can just say the music in this show fucks. I've been listening to the soundtrack basically on repeat since I finished it. The OST perfectly complements how badass this series can be, but also the intense emotional stakes present in Devilman Crybaby. I always thought this show was to be silly and horny, which, don't get me wrong, it is definitely silly. And it's absolutely horny. But the horny, I feel, plays two parts in this series. The first being that sexuality is tested repeatedly in Devilman Crybaby's runtime, with all of this sin potentially being a huge contribution to the growth in demons appearing. Demons are also true to their desires, meaning they are less likely to try and hide what they are feeling. The second, I believe, is a mental test of what's to come. If you can't handle the first half of this series, you are not prepared for the mental anguish of the second half of it. I ended up sobbing while watching Devilman Crybaby many times. Akira weirdly reminded me of myself because I too am a bit of a crybaby. He goes through a lot in this series, and by the end you are completely connected to him and feel almost everything he feels and has to endure. Not to mention every character feels very real. Everyone has ambitions and goals. Everyone wants to live and experience life. They don't want the world to end and go to Armageddon like it's on the path to. One of these characters is Miki, who is so good-hearted and sweet and wants the best for the people around her, no matter if they hurt her or don't tell her the full truth. The story has many twists and turns, and they hurt. This show will make you sad, or angry, or make you think about the world. Devilman Crybaby talks about death, guilt, love, selflessness and selfishness, jealousy, troubles of homosexuality, politics and society, religion, family, pride, grief, and so much more. If I didn't make it clear enough just now, this series isn't for everyone. There is a lot that could be difficult for some to make their way through, along with the visuals occasionally being very strange to look at, but it is unexpectedly very powerful. I was not prepared for this series, but I am thankful that I watched it. A lot of people already know about or have watched this show, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about it here. I would love to dedicate a full video, maybe multiple, to this series. I have since bought the collector's edition for it, and started to read the manga, and so much more. I didn't know what I expected, but I came out loving Devilman Crybaby. I will be giving it a strong 10 out of 10. The representation also will be getting a 10 from me. I won't get into spoilers, but this series openly depicts lesbian and gay couples, and an intersex character without fetishizing them at all. They are written with the utmost respect, and I was surprised with how openly it displayed these queer characters considering when it came out. The only other mainstream anime that felt this gay was Yuri on Ice for a long time. I love the explorations of sexuality and love present through pretty much every character as well. If you haven't seen this series yet, please do yourself a solid and watch it. But keep in mind, it is a very heavy series. And that's it. Those are all the 20 anime that I watched for Pride. I had a lot of fun making this video because I got the opportunity to watch a lot of shows I wouldn't have normally gone out of my way to, and I am hopefully going to put some series that deserve attention into the limelight. I've definitely found some new favorites, and some new shows that I kinda hate. Here is a quick tier list of the shows rated by story as a recap right here on the screen, and here is a quick tier list of the shows rated by their representation. If there is a series that caught your eye, make sure you go out there and watch it. I encourage you to form your own opinions because what I say isn't law, and you may disagree with some of my takes. But I want all of you to know that no matter what, my channel is a safe place and it always will be. I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of the following people as well: Juliet, Mimi, Dark Angel, Citrus, Izzle Shizzle, Jim, Soph, Mystic Shiki, Mathea, Ray, Alfredo, Matt, Sam, Juice, Ethan, Josiah, Nicole, Fish, Phoenix, the members of r/Ask Transgender, specifically Growflet, Lena Zelina, and LVN, the members of R Anime that helped me find a lot of these shows, One Can of Baked Beans, Holly, DD, Ishigami Crisis, Argentum Uranium, King of the Higurashi Abridged, Zach, Grayson, Sylvia, and probably many more. I know at the start I said that I had 20 or so people view it and help me out, but by the end, I worked with a much larger group of people than I ever imagined. I'm very happy to have had the help and guidance of all these people to give you one of the best experiences I possibly could. I'd also like to thank my patrons, Jim, Juliet, Joshua, and Ray. Without you, this video may have never happened. Your help has been the driving force of many of my projects. Happy Pride, everyone! I hope it's a good one. Stay safe out there.